What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bobby's Big Board. Luther Burden only started 5 games as a rookie, but he still finished with 652 receiving yards, and he really flashed the kind of explosiveness that can completely change an offense. Now his role is about to get much bigger, and the Bears finally have a chance to see what Burden looks like as a full-time weapon. Today, we're going to look at what made him so effective as a rookie, why his game fits this offense so well, and why he could be one of the biggest breakout wide receivers in football this season. So let's get right into it. Before we get into what Luther Burden showed us with the Bears, it's worth remembering just how productive he was at Missouri. Across 3 seasons, Burden caught 192 passes for 2,263 yards and 21 receiving touchdowns. He also added another 5 touchdowns as a runner and returner. His biggest season came as a sophomore when he finished with 83 catches and 1,212 receiving yards. He earned first-team All-SEC honors and became a semifinalist for the Biletnikoff Award. Burden could create explosive plays from almost anywhere in the formation. Missouri could line him up in the slot, move him outside, put him in motion, or just simply get the ball into his hands quickly and let him work. The Bears selected him with the 39th overall pick in the second round, and even though he wasn't immediately given a full-time role, the production started showing up pretty quickly. Burden appeared in 15 games, but only started in 5 of them. He still caught 47 passes for 652 yards, though, and 2 touchdowns, averaging nearly 14 yards every time he touched the ball through the air. And the more involved he became, the more productive he was. Over his first 7 games, Burden averaged fewer than 2 catches and 25 yards per game. Over the final 8 games, though, those numbers climbed to more than 4 catches and 60 yards per game. He also produced 2 separate 100-yard performances, including a career-high 138 yards against San Francisco late in the season. So the rookie numbers were impressive, but the most exciting part is that Burden appeared to be getting better as Chicago gave him more and more opportunities. And when you look at the film, it becomes pretty easy to see why. This play really showcases Luther Burden's best ability, in my opinion, and that's his yards after catch ability. In terms of the route, it's nothing crazy. It's just a dig route here, or an in route, some coaches may like to call it. It's not a super pretty route, but he does get open. He kind of uses his arm a little bit to push off the defender, and he gets open here. But I want you to pay attention to what he does after the catch here. Chicago is going to be working off of play action here, which they like to do a lot. He's going to push off a little bit here, goes up, grabs the ball, cuts back inside. And his stop and go ability is something that's really special. You see that all over the tape when he was at Missouri, and he just stops and goes. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Kadarius Toney, if you guys watched some Kansas City football a few years ago. Just a really good play here. He gets basically the maximum amount of yards here, kind of can go back and forth and break ankles. I mean, that's his main ability, and that's something that I think Chicago is going to utilize him a lot more on like screen passes and things like that. On this next play, I really want to highlight 2 things that Luther Burden does really, really well. The first thing is his ability to catch footballs away from his frame. Caleb Williams was not the best with his football placement last year. By no means. He had his problems. And then I also want to talk about Luther Burden's physicality after the catch. Not only can he beat you with his feet and his elusiveness, he can beat you by being physical and fighting for extra yards as well, which I think is super special that you can do both of those things. In terms of the route, we're talking about a basic curl route here. It could have been a comeback, but it seems like the timing was a little bit off here. And you're going to see Luther Burden have a pretty good release here, sell vertically. And this is in the snow, by the way. Comes back to the ball pretty well, but the ball is on his outside shoulder, or I guess inside shoulder, but it's away from his frame. It's a very hard catch to make here. But he makes the catch, and then you see safety, corner. You see 2 guys basically on him, ready to tackle him. Luther Burden just launches himself into both of them and fights for about 5 or 6 extra yards. Good route, great physicality after the catch. I mean, look at that. That's really impressive. And he's doing it in the snow. And he reminds me a lot of a guy like DJ Moore, one of his teammates. And I think Chicago could utilize him kind of like they've utilized DJ Moore in the past, hopefully with more targets and more production. I think Luther Burden could be really special in Chicago. On this last play, I really want to showcase how creative Chicago can get with Luther Burden in terms of just getting him the ball and letting his athleticism show. And on this play, it's a great example of that. Now, in the pre-draft process, there were a couple of concerns with Luther Burden. One was his character concerns. He would get into fights on the field. He was a little bit emotional at times on the field and got aggressive. That doesn't look like it's happened in the NFL thus far, and I think they've got a hold of him and kind of helping his character development for sure. And the other thing was his athleticism. People were thinking Luther Burden would run like a 4.6 because the speed didn't really pop off on the film. Where you're going to see kind of like a tunnel screen here does not get ran pretty much ever in the NFL. You're going to see some guys pull block for him, but they run it in Chicago because Luther Burden had some experience at Missouri running it. You're going to see him kind of catch the ball inside. That never gets called in the NFL, really ever outside of preseason. And watch what he does. As soon as he gets the ball, he turns into a runner. And watch the acceleration and the overall speed here. This is a 16-yard screenplay, which is very, very successful in terms of NFL expectations. And you just see him accelerate. Yes, he goes down at the first contact, which I'm not mad at that at all. But you just see the acceleration as soon as he gets the ball, and that's something that I personally was concerned with Luther Burden coming out of Missouri. I didn't know if he'd have the acceleration to be successful at the next level, and he absolutely showcases that week in and week out when he gets the ball. Now, this is where the 2026 part gets really fun for Luther Burden. DJ Moore is no longer in Chicago, and somebody has to take over all the snaps he left behind. Rome Odunze is still going to be the main receiver on the outside, but Burden gives Chicago something completely different: versatility. You can put him in the slot, you can send him in motion, you can stack another wide receiver behind him, you can move him around before the snap, or even play him on the outside until you get the matchup that you want. The main thing is giving him a clean release and getting the ball to him with room to work. Ben Johnson seems to completely understand that, and he said he's buying Luther Burden stock, called his offseason electric, and mentioned that Burden has been making some explosive plays while continuing to grow his route tree. Now, obviously, coaches say positive things about players during the offseason all the time, but this actually matches what we saw towards the end of his rookie year. The more comfortable he became in the offense, the more Chicago trusted him, and the more often he started making plays. I don't think Burden needs a crazy 140 target season to break out, but I think if you give him a full timeshare of the snaps, you get him somewhere around 80 to 100 targets, and you let his ability after the catch to do the rest. That's really the opportunity in front of Chicago this year. You don't need Burden to become this completely different receiver. They just need to put him on the field and give him chances to be the player he's already shown he can be. So when I look at Luther Burden going into year 2, I think the breakout is coming. He's already showed as a rookie that he can create big plays without needing a massive amount of targets. And now he should be on the field a lot more, and the offense has a clearer role with him. And Chicago has every reason to make him a bigger part of the weekly game plan. I don't expect him to suddenly become a traditional number 1 receiver who gets force-fed the ball 12 times every game. That's not really what makes him dangerous anyways. Burden can hurt a defense on a screen, across the middle, down the field, or anytime Chicago gets matched up with some space to work. If the Bears get him somewhere around 80 to 100 targets, I think he really has a good chance to become one of the most explosive receivers in the NFL. For fantasy, the weekly volume may move around because Chicago still has plenty of other weapons, but the upside is obvious, and I think Burden doesn't need a huge number of catches to completely change a week. I am buying the breakout. Let me know what you think in the comments. How big of a season do you expect from Luther Burden? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to Bobby's Big Board, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Hey.